Hey, implicit connotations. I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik Women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jacobin, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Caviese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotations. Well, I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jargon, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Cabiese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotations. I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik Women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jargon, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballad or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Caviese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics. Hey, implicit connotations. Hello, Ata. Hello, and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I'm Elise, translator, writer, and editor with 20 working languages, and this is the stream where we just kind of want to learn all the languages. How's everybody doing today? As I get the chat widget where I can actually use it. that. Not entirely sure what it is. Okay, here we go. Oh, wait. Yeah, is that always on top? Perfect. So, I found another video that showed up in my Rex. Yesterday we were looking at something that was like, native British English speakers never use these 16 phrases. And this one from a guy called British English Teacher Roy, I'm gonna drop the link in chat, is don't use these awkward British words wrong. And I mean, that sounds like it could be good for a laugh. So let's just have a look at that. This is British English Teacher Roy, just drop the link in chat. Oh, that wasn't the link. Wrong link. Sorry about that. There we go. That's the link. The link, the first link, don't click on that, you're already there. That's the link to the stream. I just did not successfully click copy.
Some words that sound innocent, and in fact in some cases are innocent, can have double meanings.
Yes, many.
And if you don't know this,
many.
It could leave you embarrassed, shocked, or even in a very awkward position. So in this lesson, I'm going to teach you a list of words and expressions that you may want to be careful when using in the UK. Now, all of these examples
I can't wait.
I'm about to talk about have come from real mistakes I've heard in the classroom. And if they'd used them on the streets of the UK in real life, well, it could have caused a very embarrassing situation. Now, I normally don't talk about things like this, and I'm going to be very embarrassed doing it, but my job...
Okay. Yeah, the excruciation level is already off the charts. This is going to be good.
As an English teacher, is to protect you. It's to protect English learners like you. So while I'm going to be embarrassed...
I would say it's to protect, but also to make sure people know exactly what the connotations of things are. There we are with connotations again. So that they can use them intentionally. That's the goal, so that you can use to me, that is the goal. You know these things so that you can use them intentionally if you should decide that there is an occasion.
This is for you, so that you aren't embarrassed. And plus, this is a safe space to learn these words, which could be taken in a very different way. And I'm going to find this lesson quite painful. You may just want to watch it for that.
Yes, that is actually one of the, now you mention it, this is one of the reasons I'm watching it.
Come can be pretty innocent, and it can be like, come here, go there. But sometimes British people will use the word come as an informal way of talking about orgasms. Now,
yes, that's okay, which is actually an that is actually, I think, more or less an Anglosphere universal. Certainly in North America it's used that way. Okay, yes. And one thing to note about that is there's also... cum is not always a slang term. Sometimes it is a Latin word that is used to mean that something doubles as something.
Particularly unwell, you could say, I'm not feeling myself today, or I'm not feeling like myself today. It means that you are not in your usual state. That is completely fine. However,
yeah.
Tell a student in a class, say, yesterday I wasn't feeling myself, but today I am feeling myself and I love it. To which I said,
you want to work on the emphasis there, certainly. Yeah, gozar. Yeah, I mean, in Spanish, that can also mean more than one thing.
No, Carlos! That's not quite how we use it. So what went wrong? Well, feel yourself sounds a bit like that they are...
Yeah, there's a difference between feeling yourself and feeling yourself.
Touching their private areas, so using words like feel yourself or touch yourself has a distinctly sexual tone.
Well, the latter one isn't even a double meaning, that's just what it is, for the most part. The first one, it's all about emphasis, it's about pitch accent, actually, thinking about it. That's the difference between saying, I'm not feeling myself, and I'm not feeling myself.
Behind it. What should he have said instead? Well, possibly, I'm feeling more like myself today, or I'm feeling better. Both of those would have avoided any kind of embarrassment. But that one...
Well, I mean, a big part of that, it is really the emphasis. That is really the key there.
And there's so many examples of that. Think about the words garbage and man. You pronounce it one way, and it's one word for the people who, empty your bins. You pronounce it another way, and you're referring to a guy who sucks.
Was a mistake that just sounds wrong. Now, I will say that this isn't an exhaustive list. It's actually based on my real-life experiences with students. And not just students, because this next one is related to my wife. Puppies. Her dog had puppies. Puppies are baby dogs. My wife really loves baby dogs. And she said, "Oh my gosh, you have puppies. Can I see your puppies? Can I touch them?" To which...
Yes, indeed. This actually reminds me of something that happened when my mother went to Toys R Us when I was little. And she asked the employee if he had big red balls.
Every British person in the room let out a little laugh. Why? Well, puppies could be a nickname for a woman's breasts. It made people laugh because it sounded like my wife said, "Oh, your breasts, can I touch them?" But what my wife said wasn't wrong, and it was completely innocent, but it just had a double meaning that made her friends laugh.
Yes!
So
all puppies are beautiful. Okay, so... Get off banging... Okay, these are all very universal. Oh, you...
can be used to refer to that area as well. First up, we have sausage, which could be used to mean penis. Meat could also be used to mean penis. And
lots of things could. West Streeting can be used to mean that. Keir Starmer can be used to mean that.
The men's genitalia as meat and to veg. The to veg relates to the testicles. Just a little bonus one, spotted dick is actually a dessert. It is delicious, but the word dick is actually a slightly rude word, which means penis as well. Well,
this is also why, if you will sometimes see this in the frozen food aisle in supermarkets here in the US, and it's not called that. It's called spotted dog, which I don't really think is actually that much better.
Which can create a bit of humour. So if you say, "I really enjoy spotted dick," you might make a British person laugh, even though it is completely innocent and completely...
Especially if you pronounce it with that kind of emphasis, because it almost sounded like you said a spot of dick.
Correct. One that confused my wife completely is the birds and the bees. If somebody says, "I'm going to talk about the birds and the bees," or "we need to have a chat with our child about the birds and the bees," they're basically talking about sex and reproduction. So you know you have to have the talk with your child at some point. I am absolutely dreading it when that time comes. My son is currently 8 years old, and well, I'm going to have to talk to him at some point about it. I'm already traumatized by this video. I don't need to be traumatized by the... Oh, anyway, never mind.
Okay. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so now we've got birds and the bees, dogging, and I'm easy. I was rather hoping that there were going to be some of the more specific Anglo things. Ride, bicycle. Ride is a very Irish one. Yes, here we go.
And the 250 most important British slang expressions, and also an entire course to talk about British culture, why British people do what they do, and why we do it that way. It will help you to understand life in the UK. And on top of that, there's also weekly live sessions. There's an hour a week with me on Zoom, where I will answer your questions. You can learn so much more about it in the link down below. It's called...
Wait, when are we going to talk about cock and cockerel?
100 people, there is an extra special discount that you will get for life, as long... We've had quite a few people joining since we announced this. Going down is another expression you might want to be careful with because it can mean oral sex.
Well, we skipped cock and cockerel. Okay, now, this is much more... I was hoping for something that was more specifically British expressions. I mean, all of those certainly, yes, you can definitely do some damage. Weekly live sessions. Yes, that is true. Okay, so Evil Dia now has a video called How to Learn a Language the Definitive Method. Oh god, I see what chat's going to be doing for the next, 2 hours. But here we go.
What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel.
Okay, we can possibly slow this down a bit. This is going to be the definitive method. I'm very curious what he's going to say here, and whether he's being ironic, which he might be. He sometimes be's ironic.
Every now and then I get a comment down in the comment section. Someone's like, Evil Deer, please tell me, what is the best method in the world? What is Evil Deer TM patented method?
And I would have to say there's so many better people to ask. Oh God, nothing to be sorry for. It'll be entertaining if nothing else.
I just want to know, okay? Because, you know, you're doing all these public experiments and trials, you do these reacts where I have to watch like 30 minutes to get like 2 seconds of like good information out of it. Like, please, just make one video called Evil Deer Best Method TM. Now, the problem is, guys, and the reason why I never say this is the best method is because it's dependent on a myriad of data points. Like, you can boil down language learning into like a couple of basic things, but realistically, one, what's the language you even want to learn? That's going to make a big difference. If it's a sign language, like most stuff that I speak about in this channel just does not apply. Now let's just...
Actually, that's not really true. He's assuming that sign language is fundamentally different to other human language, and it isn't. It actually behaves very much the same way, it's just you don't use your mouth. Well, I mean, you use your mouth as sort of an expressive accoutrement, because sign languages often involve a lot of sort of overacting in order to get the point across. In fact, the word that I've seen used in guides to learn sign language actually say, you know, overact, because you want to increase the visual point that you're making, since you don't have... You're not using voice in order to provide emphasis, so you have to use visuals.
It's a language that can be spoken. Even then, is it a language like Latin, which is, for the most part, a dead language, although there is living Latin communities and stuff like that. So there, I'm assuming your wants and needs are probably different to most of those people who are learning to speak a language. Is it a minority language with very limited resources, or is it a massive language with just endless...
Well, see, the thing is, for all of these kinds of languages, the gold standard is going to be something that gives you a lot of comprehensible input, and that's true with signed languages too. Though signed languages have grammar, they have syntax, they have structure. You can, if you look at the writing of people who primarily use signed languages, often they will have very characteristic tells in terms of what the grammar they use when they're using, say, English, for example, in writing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, facial expressions, eyebrows up, the speed at which you're making the signs, all that stuff comes into it, and there is a syntax. A lot of people think that sign language is just you do the alphabet in signs, which is a great way to annoy the hell out of deaf people, because it takes forever to actually say the thing you're trying to say if you're spelling the whole thing out. But actually, comprehensible input is important there too. All of these things you would want to center around that. Now, sometimes if it's a dead language that is a written dead language, the source is going to be largely going to be written. If it is a living language that is spoken, then you're also going to have a lot of... You're going to want to mix in spoken input, and the thing that comes in there when it's in endangered language is... the challenge, there isn't a fundamental difference to how you're going to acquire the language. The difficulty is finding the resources. That is the challenge. And that is the challenge that they have. I mean, they're trying to revive, for example, a lot of Aboriginal languages in Australia. Well, not a lot of them. There are a few active projects that I know of. At the Polyglot Gathering, I regularly see a guy who is involved in one of these projects. And, of course, one of the challenges is you don't have the kind of resources to provide the input to get, your fluent speakers in order to have, which you need if you're going to have a generation then of native speakers who speak it primarily.
Amounts of resources. Now, that's when it comes to the languages themselves. Now, what happens then if you're the type of person who just wants to watch content, or just wants to read, or wants to do everything, read, write, the whole works, or actually you're just the type of person who just wants to understand and just speak, and you don't care about reading. Like, all of these things can make a big difference on the method you should take up and use. Now, the question is,
I would say not a whole lot. I mean, for one thing, because in all cases, it's going to be centered around input. What kind of input you use, what sort of things you focus on, that's another thing. Although I would say, I would push back on people who say, I just want to speak it, not read it. I mean, there are situations where, like, reading the writing, standard writing system really isn't even an option. People, unsighted people, partially sighted people may actually be looking at whatever the local equivalent of Braille is, the local version of it. In Japan, for example, they have 10 as in point, ji as in character. So there, obviously, you're going to be doing things differently. But really, not learning to read, if it is a written language, is going to make progress difficult in the long run, because a lot of the language is going to be written. And so, that may not be your initial priority, in which case you'll be doing much the same thing that somebody whose priority does include reading will do, but it's always, the input is always going to be at the core of the thing. What input you use may vary.
A lot of people are you the type of person who actually likes to study, or do you freaking hate everything grammar related? Because again, that's going to narrow it down to a bunch of different proposals that I can give to you.
And not really, because even if you're a total grammar nerd, that is not how you acquire grammar. Like, I love grammar, I find it fascinating, I read all about it. That is not how I've ever acquired grammar, and when I'm trying to actually acquire a language, I specifically do not spend a lot of time cramming grammar into me. At most, maybe I will just quickly have a look over how do words change, in that extremely broad way. Okay, what are some word endings that I'm likely to see? And beyond that, nothing else. But the way that these things are acquired does not fundamentally change.
Are you the type of person who likes to sit at home and solo study, or are you the type who likes to get out there, or at least get online and speak with others? Again, it changes things. So I can't say this here is the best method, because it depends on you and what you want to do. Now, I know that sucks, because you're probably sitting there and going, oh man, I was hoping this was the best method. No, fuck, now I'm going to have to listen to another 30-minute reaction, and then another one, and another one, another one to try and figure out what I want to do.
Now, one thing to say is, once you have that core of input, what input you're going to use is going to vary from person to person. What other things you might do will differ from person to person. And how you go about interacting with the input can vary somewhat from person to person, and based on experiences like, what prior language experience do you have? What languages do you already know? Stuff like that. But the core is going to be the same all the time.
I just want to know. I get it, guys. I get it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to propose a method now based on my experience with language learners, the vast majority that I do encounter. This is based on that group. So if you are not that group,
interesting.
This doesn't apply to you. Okay? I'm just getting that out there. So I'm going to assume that you guys want to learn one of the most common languages out there. Most commonly learned secondary languages. Let's say French, German, Chinese, Spanish, Japanese, one of these languages, okay. Now let's make a second judgment call here. I'm assuming your priority is to understand content, but also to eventually speak. But
okay.
You don't prioritize speaking as much right now. Now, I know this is going to cut off a bunch of you guys.
But really, the thing is, you shouldn't be forcing yourself to speak early on, because it doesn't actually really help. You need, this is where patience comes in. Patience is really underrated in a lot of the language learning space, People don't understand. People don't want to believe that these things do inherently take a certain amount of time. So even if you would love to be speaking straight off, just cool down. We're not there yet.
But the reason I'm focusing on that is because I have a fair number of people in my audience who are. That's the route they're chasing. So now we're going for a common language with lots of resources, and we're more focused on understanding the language as opposed to speaking, but we do want to speak eventually. Now, the third one, you hate grammar. You don't want to study grammar. You're not a grammar person. You would, back in high school, you in Spanish, in the back of the locker room, Spanish felt you up and you felt all weird about it since, and it was whispering sweet grammars into your ear, and you can't do that anymore. You don't want any grammar in your life. I get it, okay? Traumatic memories will push that stuff down.
And here again, this is where we get into the fact that there's more than one sense in which you study grammar.
We'll let it all come out
but
later
let's
on
see
when
what he
you're
says.
50 and you're talking with your grandson or something. We're going to talk about now a common language you want to understand, later on speak, and then you're not interested in going a heavy grammar approach. And finally, you don't have endless time. You're not a YouTube polyglot. You don't have 8 hours to 12 hours in a day to dedicate to this. You got 1 to 2 hours max. If you don't have 1 to 2 hours a day, you're really limiting your options right now.
Well, I mean, you're not limiting your options. It's going to take longer. If you have that kind of time, you can probably get to the same place a lot sooner. But if you don't have that kind of time or that kind of energy, you can probably still get to the same level, but it'll take you a while longer.
Do it on 1 hour a day, but this is going to take you years. And when I mean years, I mean like 5-6+ years. This is going to be
yeah.
Long journey if you don't at least have 2 hours a day.
It always is a long journey, is the thing. I mean, this is one of the things that really, again, it's like, people want to believe that this is something that you could just do instantly. I mean, you have that Tony Marsh, who actually you can become a polyglot in 3 weeks with his bogus ass method. These time frames are just completely out of whack. Even, okay, let's say you're doing 6 hours a day of ALG, optimized ALG instruction, really good stuff that really works for you. What you're going to have after, say, 3,000, 4,000 hours is a good starting point. Your development is not going to end just because you run out of the content. What you have there is you're in a position where, ideally, if it's gone well and it's good material, you are able to understand a good deal of what people are saying. You can more or less express yourself. You may have trouble with that, but you don't have the whole language. Like, nobody has the whole language. You don't even have all of the language that you will have if you keep on going and keep reading books and watching TV and interacting with people and all that stuff. You're going to keep developing. These things they inherently take time. Why do we have to just pretend otherwise?
Build all of that, okay? If that's you, great, let's keep going. If it's not you, then you might want to bugger off and do something else. What I would approach this problem with is I'd say, okay, based on all of this, you want an immersion-based approach. An approach where you get down and dirty with the language as fast as possible.
Okay, immersion is a term that gets misused a lot, of course. Immersion is not the same thing as an input-based approach. And immersion actually can be mostly a source of frustration at this level. Immersion is when you surround yourself with the language. An input-based approach is you expose yourself to it in a curated sort of a way.
So you get to enjoy the language literally from day one, but I'm not going to hit you with any form of grammar. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be like, oh, well, all you're going to do is sit there and watch content. No, that's not good because you've got limited time. You've got 1 to 2 hours a day, right? You don't want to be doing this for like 5 years and then only reach like an intermediate level. No, we want you to reach a good level.
And only, I love that, only reach an intermediate level. Like, if you, depending on what, okay, let's just remember that the amount of time it's going to take is going to vary based on all sorts of factors inherent to the language that you already know, or languages, and the language you're trying to learn. 5 years to get to an intermediate level, in some cases, especially if all you've got is an hour or two a day, could be a result. I mean, in some cases, you could actually get there a lot sooner. but in some cases, it could actually just take that long. What I don't understand what the fucking hurry is. That is the thing that gets me with so many of these creators. It's like, what exactly is the situation that you are in such a hurry to learn the language?
A couple of years at least, okay? So in this instance, I would say, from day one, the very first thing you need to do is actually research the language you're looking into. The best way you can do this, and the simplest, is just to go to ChatGPT or Gemini or something and go, hey, you know what, I want to learn, let's say, Japanese.
Okay, you do that, and then you immediately remove those things from your machine because they are worthless.
What is the things most people have struggles with? And just read. Don't study grammar. Just do a little bit.
Wait, okay, so not even using it as a search engine, which it's not. It is vastly inferior to a search engine. Using it as a probabilistic text generator, as a primary source of information, God, that is horrible advice. Don't do that. Like, the first thing that is worth doing, I mean, there's Comprehensible Input Wiki. That is a very good place to start, especially if it's a commonly learned language. It's probably also a commonly taught language, and you might have tons of stuff to choose from. Even some less commonly learned languages, like Welsh, have a good amount of stuff to choose from. I mean, you could just go on YouTube and search your target language, learn your target language, and see what comes up. And some of those resources might actually be quite good. You just go through them. Maybe there's somebody who has written a review of resources in your target language for speakers of whatever your native language is. And maybe somebody's done like a review, a top 10, either as a video or as an article or whatever. Well, I mean, read that. Do anything. Don't do this. That's bullshit.
Research. You only need to do about an hour's worth to know everything that you're going to encounter. For example, if Japanese would say, oh, well, if you're an English learner, there's going to be 3 scripts you're going to have to tango with. Apart from that, there's a bunch of unique sounds you're going to have to worry about. Now, I'm not saying go out and learn those sounds, okay? Because, like, obviously, you're the type of person, you're a little bit scared about doing all that stuff, okay, from day one.
Well, you're going to have to get used to it, because you're going to encounter those sounds. You don't have to make those sounds yet. But listen to them, learn to distinguish them. The better you get at distinguishing them, the easier you will find it to make them. We hear before we speak. We hear sounds before we make them.
We're going to start soft, we're going to start with understanding language, and then we'll move into speaking a little bit down the track, okay? But you don't have to learn the grammar, you're just asking it questions. Give me an example of how it's different. If it was literally, 2 sentences in English where there's a big difference.
Like, again, this is something that these devices are totally unsuited for. They're not really suited for much of anything, actually, truth be told. They're garbage. But, like, fucking use a search engine. Why are we pretending that this replaces search engines? It is not capable of it. It is inferior in every way to a search engine.
Show me. Just get a bird's eye view of what's different between the 2 languages. This is not you studying grammar. This is just you visually seeing on the screen where the differences are. Spend about an hour just to ask it some questions. Get a bird's eye view. That's pretty.
Yeah, skip this. Do not do this. There are so many better ways to do it.
Now you've done that, cool. Let's actually start. So the first thing you're going to want to do is download an application called Anki. It's a.
Okay, and then you're going to free up some space by removing it, because this is not going to be much help.
Piece of software, you can find it online. Tons of videos on how to use Anki. I've got videos on my channel and other people made videos, but you'll get that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to spend the vast majority of your time literally with the language. So if it's Spanish, you can go get a service like Dreaming Spanish. If it's Japanese, you can go get...
Okay. Okay, here we have something useful.
Majority of your time literally with the language. So if it's Spanish, you can go get a service like Dreaming Spanish. If it's Japanese, you can go get Comprehensible Japanese. It's another service. If it's freaking Chinese, I think there's like Lazy Chinese. Like there's
there are tons of them, and some will be better suited to you than others.
Services out there which just provide you lots of content at a very basic level, basically from 0 and then slowly moving up. But you do not follow the recommendations of those websites. They will recommend a process that will keep you on those websites for a very, 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 very long time, for years, locked into a subscription service. However,
well, or without a subscription service.
Their content is great, but the way they propose you use it, not so great. So you're going to get one of those services. So let's say the Dreaming Spanish one, okay, for Spanish content, and you've got your Anki sitting there. Now, what do you do with Anki? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to basically start creating, let's say, 6 flashcards a day. Don't go...
Oh, okay, so this is supposed to make it take less time. That's what's wild about this. specifically trying to interfere with your development of comprehension of the input and trying to make it into a rote memorization thing, that's not going to speed things up. It's going to feel like it speeds things up. You're not going to get anywhere, though, because this doesn't help. This is not what you're getting out of input.
More than that. You may feel like on day 1, 6 is freaking nothing, but you've only got 2 hours. If you start building out more than 6 cards, that's going to, with the reviews in the next few days, start stacking up major time. Like, you do 15, and you're going to start having, like, 50 reviews within a week.
Well,
okay, like,
yeah, I mean, this is a waste of time.
Every single day, and for most people, they'll cock out at that point. So we're going to start simple. 6. If that even sounds a little bit traumatizing for you, pull it down to 5.
Yeah, in fact, take it down to 0. Actually, you take the indications about how long... how many hours will get you to what level with a grain of salt, but just use the fucking... expose yourself to comprehensible input. This is not better than that. This is actually worse than that. This is actually mostly a waste of time.
It's a nice number, though. You're not really going to feel 6. So what are the 6 cards you're going to make? Well, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be watching a lot of input on these services such as Dreaming Spanish, Comprehensible Japanese, Lazy Chinese, whatever it is, okay? However, in conjunction, you're going to basically optimize that path. So you're going...
And here, it's funny how many people have actually tried to explain at this point to him in very detailed ways why he is fundamentally misunderstanding what happens when you engage it with input, what you're doing there. He still thinks it's a memorization task. It isn't a memorization task. He still thinks that you're optimizing your memorization by, extracting certain words and phrases and trying to do rote memorization with matching pairs. You're not. You are de-optimizing comprehension.
To create some flashcards. The flashcards you're going to create are audio flashcards. You're just going to listen to the language. We don't bother with the scripts or anything right now. So how can you create these flashcards? Well, let's think about the types of cards that you're going to need. When you watch that content, you might be thinking, well then the best flashcards I could make that I could listen to, audio flashcards, would just be based on a frequency list, right? I should just go look for the 1,000 most common words? No, don't do that. Instead, what you want to do is focus on the words that are hard to pick up from input. So words like dog, cat, these things are super easy to pick up from input. Like,
all of these things get picked up from input. It is a matter of how soon. The thing is, he's already abstracting this on to an even more unhelpful level, because you could say there's some utility, some very marginal utility as priming again, if you are taking phrases, because we learn these things in context. We acquire these things in context. And he's stripping all the context. This does not make it easier. This actually makes it harder, because you're just sort of hiding it off in a completely unassociated place. So don't do that.
Literally in all of these services, they will point to the cat and they'll say, kato. In like Esperanto, or gato, or mal, like all these different words. Like just point out and you'll know straight away what they're talking about. What you want to do is get those hard words, the words that would normally take an immersion approach 1,000 hours to get, and shove those in from day 1. So the first 6 words, they might literally just be the pronoun for I. Now I know you guys are freaking out. You're like, I don't want to learn grammar. You just said pronoun. You don't need to learn grammar. Okay, you just need.
Well, you are learning grammar when you are exposing yourself to comprehensible input. That is the main thing that is happening. You just aren't aware of it because it isn't studying grammar the way you've been told that studying grammar works. The difference between this and that is that it works better.
To recognize basic words. So you go to Gemini and you say, okay, how do I say I in this language?
Well, yeah, let's have more garbage. Let's put more garbage in the method. The method needs more garbage. We need to feed the garbage makers.
Now, in some languages, it'll be one word. Other languages, like, for example, Japanese, for instance, there's many ways to say I. You just say, what are the most common ways to say I in this language? Okay, now.
Don't do that. Like, you're going to trust a fucking random text generator to tell you all the nuances of the differences between watashi, atashi, ore, boku. Yeah, exactly. There is a better thing. It's called a fucking search engine.
if you did your research beforehand, you will know whether this could be a standalone word. In some languages, the pronoun's actually completely attached to, the rest of the language in ways that you can't pull out. And in that case, fine, don't do it. So just remember, research first so you understand the differences. Now, if this is like most languages where the pronoun is an independent word, then you can just say, okay, it'll give me 5 words. Do you need to learn the differences between those? No, don't bother with that. Just grab all 5 of those, run them through a text-to-speech engine,
and throw that out because it will probably do a bad job.
For whatever language you're learning, crop that audio in whatever way you want, put it in the flashcard on the front, and on the back just write out the word hi.
See, the result of this, it's worth noting. I mean, there are people who've done videos on it. People who are doing this end up sounding like a fucking automatic voicemail system on a phone tree.
What you're going to do is you're going to run through those 6 cards, and you might want to review them several times over until you can hear that word and you know it means that word. Now, you might have, on your first day of 6 cards, 4 words for I. So what do you do for the other 2 words? Start picking out the most common things that you're going to start seeing in content. So you're going to do a feedback loop on yourself. So the first video you watch on that Dreaming Spanish whatever or Comprehensible Japanese website is, it's just going to be, I don't know, it's going to be something like, someone's going to pick up some glasses and be like, hey, this is glasses.
And also, I mean, the wild thing about this as well is he's done all this time with Spanish, and judging from his ability, he knows which factors to be picking out in order to judge different Spanish accents, different Spanish regional variants. And he almost certainly understands in context that you can just leave out the pronouns in Spanish, that people very often do because the verb carries the information. And he's still talking about this as if you didn't.
Glasses, I've got glasses. These are my glasses. And you're already going to hear that pronoun, I, all over the time because you just practiced it a bunch of times in your flashcards. So everything else in that video is not going to be recognizable to you except for the thing that they keep repeating over and over.
Well, yeah, but that's actually worse. If nothing else is recognizable to you in the video, then you need a different video. That video is too advanced for you. The video that you want to be dealing with is one where most things are recognizable to you. Either because you already know the words, or because there are contextual aids that help you understand what they mean. If you're watching a video, if you're watching some supposedly comprehensible input, and all you're getting is one word that you drilled the shit out of yourself on, find something less advanced. You're not there yet.
The glasses. So by the end of that video, you're probably going to recognize the word glasses when you hear it. You're not going to be able to say it, but you're going to hear it. So there's no point you putting that in your flashcards. That's just a wasted flashcard. But the pronoun I, that one will trip you up because you won't know what you're looking for. Because it could come at the beginning, it could come at the end. The finger pointing is not really going to do it. Sometimes maybe when they do this you can, but it's very hit and miss, okay? Especially when they can change in different ways. So
yeah, but the thing is, you're actually confusing yourself if you do this because it can change in different ways. When they're pointing at themselves, they are making it clear that they are referring to themselves. And that's what matters, actually. Because there are all sorts of ways you might be referring to yourself. There may not be a pronoun in the whole thing. If I say, llevo puesta una polera negra. I am referring to myself. But I am not using any pronoun for my, to indicate the first person. It's just in the verb. And in some languages, you've got no pronouns being used at all a lot of the time. Like Japanese, you can have a full sentence that is understood where the subject and the object are all implied and there are no pronouns at all. And or proper names or any kind of nouns. Just, sometimes it's literally just the verb.
You're listening to that and you're like, okay, cool, I've got that. I can hear the word I popping up in its different context here. What other words? Well, what's the words that have been going, this, that. Now, some languages have many ways to say this and that. There may be one word for this and 3 words for that, it doesn't really matter. Again, just go to the
See, if you're already getting these things, what's the point of having the fucking flashcard? You're getting more out of it by watching it in context. Because the thing is, what you're getting in context is the difference in the usage. Now, you may not get a perfect account of the difference in the usage. Sometimes the difference is very, very subtle in a lot of ways. There are, for example, the traditional way you teach, ko, so, a, do in Japanese, which is kore, sore, are, dore. is they'll say like kore is right here with me, sore is right there with you, are is over there, and dore is the easy one because it's just which one. Fine. But the thing is, even when sometimes there are distinctions between kore and sore when there is no spatial context at all. And all sorts of other things. And the way people acquire that is they hear it used a lot and gradually recognize the patterns. You're not going to get that from doing this. And and if you're just translating it in your Anki deck, that's actually going to make it harder for you, because it does not map easily to this and that. It does not always mean, like sore does not always mean that thing that is over where you are. Sometimes it means that thing that we were already talking about, and kore means this thing that I am introducing as a new topic. And all sorts of things. So this is actually going to make things harder.
So how do I say this and that? And it will tell you, okay? You can ask it a couple of questions and be like, can you give me an example of like where they might be different? Like, this is not you studying grammar, this is just you getting a bird's eye view of basic...
This is you getting inaccurate information from a garbage generator.
How this works. Once you know whatever the words for this and that are, into your flashcards. That's day one. Watch a bunch of content, try and listen in for the this and that I.
This is actually, I mean, he's talking about this like it will speed it up, but this is actually a way to slow it down massively, because if all you're doing is listening for these individual words, rather than engaging and focusing, fully focusing on what you're looking at and understanding. Yeah, he doesn't understand what context is. Hey, Zira. He literally does not seem to comprehend what context is. Because, see, if you're engaging with it fully, so you're focused on everything, you're focused on what they're saying, what they're showing you, all of the context that is there in order to give meaning to these things, you will get a lot more. If all you're doing is focusing on a couple of words that you keep hearing, like yo, or tu, or wo, or weon, or something like that, that is not going to help you. That is going to slow down the process. You may think that this is an improvement in efficiency, but it's because you don't understand what the underlying process is.
Okay, well, you're going to go back to that content. Before you do, you refresh your flashcards, you do your practice, then you watch the content again, okay? Now, the content you're watching is going to be some other random video on one of these services. In the next video, you're probably going to see them going, blah, 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 this, blah, 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 I, blah, 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 that, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, in which case you're getting less from that than you would be getting if you just watched the fucking video. Like, the first video that I watched in Comprehensible Thai, a language that before that I had never done really anything with. Yeah, Elmo is just, like, doesn't want to be part of this, just looking at his navel. Actually, yeah, that, like, crossbar thing, that would be very uncomfortable for Elmo. Elmo balls hurt. Hello, Jasper Synth. Yes, we're watching, this is his definitive language learning method, and so far it is how to waste time with probabilistic text generators and how to minimize the benefit from comprehensible input. Like, okay, so what I was saying was the very first video that I watched of Comprehensible Thai. Okay, initially, in the first few minutes, there wasn't a whole lot I got. But by the end of it, I was getting a whole bunch. Not necessarily individual words, but certainly phrases. So it wasn't blah, 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 I, blah, 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 you. It was more like, I went there, whole phrases. And, of course, there's a process of refinement that continues even today. Yeah. And, even from phrases that I've already heard a million times at this point, I am deriving more meaning out of them because you start seeing words and components in different contexts. Like what he's talking about, you're going to get a lot less out of this. This is the opposite.
And you might notice that they're like, because in pretty much all of these services, the first things they're trying to teach you is questions and how they work.
No, they're not.
The best thing to go put in your flashcards.
No, that's not what's going on here. The reason they use questions is because precisely you're able to create relationships between question words and things. ¿Qué es esto? Esto es un ahueonado que se cree experto en materia de aprendizaje de idioma. ¿Qué es esta wea? Esta wea es un video que hizo él. And so it is creating relationships. It is creating connections. It isn't just we're teaching you question words. It is specifically because that is a way to establish certain words. Like the routine that they have at the beginning of every comprehensible Thai video is one of them will go, Wan ni, wan arai ka, wan ni, and that means what day is today? Wan ni, wan pariha. Today is Thursday. Wan ni, wan ti taurai ka. What day of the month is today? Wan ni, wan ti yi sip cheka. Okay. And what you're doing is you are... this gives you a place to repeat words in a similar context without introducing too many new variables, but you start to actually get the point. Yes, exactly. This is massive crossover confusion and dilution of all the effective ingredients. This is the homeopathic approach to comprehensible input right here. Yeah, exactly. One ni, and as you go on, you realize that ni can be used in a lot of other situations. That one is day, and ni actually is the equivalent of this, and you could use it in other places. Wela ni at this time. Kanompan ni, this bread, whatever. And you get that because the context keeps on mixing up the variables, and the more words you have cemented in your understanding, the more variables you can work with. That is how this works. They are using questions because this is a way to get repetition in there. It is a way to vary the context without changing up so many things that you get lost. And they're doing it in a very specific way where everything is, at this point, somewhat familiar. Like you have to understand the thinking behind these methods in order to understand how they work. And to understand how to get the most benefit out of them. And he doesn't. And it's like he is so resistant to considering the possibility that these things are based on a type of thinking that is not his. These things would make so much more sense to him if he was willing to stop for a second and say, okay, what if this is not fundamentally a memorization task? What if this is fundamentally a different thing to what I conceptualize it as? What if this is not a float object. He's some kind of a programmer. What if the attributes and methods associated with this are in fact the attributes and methods of a string object? That's what we're talking about. It's funny. There is like a genre of people trying to use programming analogies to help him understand what one of them has described as a category error that he's making to help him kind of get out of this misunderstanding. To help him out of this misunderstanding and help him understand how this differs from how he conceptualizes it. But he just, like, is so resistant to stepping out of his understanding of what this is and considering the possibility that his understanding could use some correction, that he tries to force everything into this model.
How to say who, what, where, when, how. Just ask the AI. Again, they may not work like English. They may be...
You realize there are people... This is you've got the fucking internet. You've got the fucking... It's the sum of human knowledge at your fingertips. For now, I mean, you have all of these countries, like Australia is one of them, trying to claw all that shit back and put it behind an ID wall so that people can't just freely search out these things, but we can for now anyway. And hopefully, if we actually fight back and stop this shit, that we will be able to do so indefinitely. So you don't have to rely on fucking Gemini or fucking Grok, Mecha Hitler, or any of this shit. You can actually read articles by people who know about these things, who explain it for the minds of beginners who aren't familiar with them. If you don't want to read articles, you can watch videos by people who actually know about this shit and are good at explaining it to people who are just getting into it. Like, you don't need to do this. Like, why?
Things that go at the end of the sentence, like a random piece that goes at the end, they may come at the front as independent words. Again, this is not me saying you must add these words. This is me saying go do a little bit of research, find out what they say, how it works, just ask some basic questions. This is not you memorizing any rules. Find out what the way it is done, and then understand one word into the flashcard. Now, you've got the most common words, like who, what, his, where. You've got the pronoun, you're going to add the other pronouns in, for him, her.
Like, this is why, I mean, when he was responding to one of my videos, he's like, he fundamentally did not understand. It became clear he fundamentally does not understand what input-based methods are. He fundamentally does not he still doesn't understand it. God, this guy should not be giving advice. Maybe he shouldn't be getting advice from fucking Gemini. Maybe that's the problem. Because the thing is, what Gemini and fucking Grok and Twat GPT and all the rest of them are good at is validating your preconceptions. Because they want to keep you on there. And so they're valid. So maybe that's what's happening. He's putting stuff in there, asking questions in ways that, they contain his preconceived notions. And so the answers he gets validate his preconceived notions rather than actually just listening to or reading people who understand this stuff better than he does.
And you're going to do this day by day. But I don't want you adding nouns in. Nouns as in, bottle, table, chair. All of those things you will pick up from the content very, very fast. I also don't want you to worry about adjectives. Just don't bother with that stuff. But things like only, actually, and, or. These things would make sense to put in there because they're very, very, very hard to pick up from watching a lot of content. And
actually, they're very, very easy to pick up from watching a lot of content. Because if it's done well, if the content is done with the learner in mind, you will get these things. You will get them in context, so you will actually be seeing it used correctly from the start without your assumptions that come from your native language interfering at that point.
In no time, you've done 6 days, you've got 6 cards the first day, 12 cards the second day. You will find very, very quickly that you're acquiring the essential glue of the language.
Oh, okay, Zero has a very nice soap box. Great soap in that box. But you ultimately learn languages by yourself. Languages generate from and evolve inside of culture, a community. Has he met anyone from the languages he claims? Well, the only language he really claims is Esperanto. He has like sort of an intermediate level of Chinese. He is married to somebody from the language who is a Chinese speaker. But yeah, it's like That is true. This is actually, I mean, what Zira says there, there's a very important thing there. You fundamentally teach yourself languages no matter what you're doing, even if there's somebody helping you out. It is very much understanding how to go about doing it. And this is not it. This is like somebody gives you this is like a video on like fucking, I don't know, pen testing. And it's like, okay, and it gives you the right resources. It's like, look, okay, mate, here's what you gotta do. Yeah, you're gonna download a VM. It's called Kali Linux. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna get into Kali Linux, right? By opening your VM, and what you're gonna do is you're going to open the browser. You're gonna open the browser, and now you're just gonna watch Peppa Pig all day. This is, it's like you got the right resource, and you're totally you're using it the most worthless way possible. Yeah, joining the community is very important. I would agree. Get invited to the cookout is a nice way of putting it, and probably would taste good as well. It's like here is a good resource, and here's how to completely misuse it. That you will get no benefit.
Picking up in context. Now, how long should you do this for? I can't give you a deadline, but there's going to be a point where you feel comfortable and you understand the beginning type of stuff pretty good, and you're starting to power through and you're starting to get a lot more words. And at some point, you're going to go, okay, now I want to speak. Now, before you open your mouth and you just start speaking, which is what a lot of these services recommend, don't do this. Okay.
No, it's not that they recommend it. What they're pointing out is that at a certain point, you will spontaneously start speaking. Spontaneously, sentences that you have never heard before will form in your head. They will just come, and you just say them. And maybe they don't sound great at first because you're new to this. You haven't talked in this language before. But that's what they're talking about. Like,
okay, you're going to start what they use in the language community, fossilizing bad habits. You're gonna.
That is not a thing. That fossilization is not a thing. Yeah, they don't say that in the language community anymore, because there's this available studies show it's not really a thing. People's language habits change all the fucking time. Don't worry about fossilization. Don't just speak. When you start spontaneously finding sentences forming in your head, just speak. Just let it come out. It'll probably be wrong in some ways. You will improve as you understand more.
Up your pronunciation from day one. What I recommend you do is find a native, a tutor, someone, okay, to help you with those sounds. You can start on YouTube, look up the sounds of the language. How do you know what sounds are different? Go to AI. Hey,
God. Why would you do that? Like, you just need to hear the fucking sounds. It's like the concept of search engines has disappeared from his vocabulary. Like, do you not remember the before times when we could actually go and type stuff into a search field and we would get the exact thing we were looking for? That's what it was like in the before times. Like, what I'm talking about is actually right the fuck now, because you can still do that. Google is not as good as it used to be. They're deliberately fucking it up in order to encourage people to use their garbage machines. But you can still actually get a reasonable response. And other browsers are actually, other search engines are like at least as good at this point, because they are really taking Google straight down the gurgler.
Sounds exist in this language that are different to my native language. Now, if you've already done 100 hours, maybe 200 hours, I don't know, of content where you've brought in a whole heap of words, okay, then you've probably got a pretty good ear for it. Now, you may want to start at 50 hours. You may want to start speaking. This is, again, it's depending on you. How much do you want to speak? Some people want to wait a bit so they can get an ear for the language, so they can hear the differences in sounds. It really depends on you. There's no good recommendation for how.
I mean, it does really depend on you. He's right about that. But the thing is, speech emerges on its own. So just listen in your head, and if you start hearing your brain make sentences like yeah, you know, der hier hat einen an der Waffe, or something like that, then you just start saying them. Just then you know that speech is already emerging. When you're like mentally hearing things spontaneously, forming sentences you have not actually heard before, so they aren't coming from, from memorization. AI Max Headroom. On the other stream, there was a guy, some member of Congress, who looked just like Max Headroom, like old Max Headroom.
How long you should wait. Okay, some people don't even want to wait at all. That's perfectly fine. So you will want to maybe go to YouTube and look up those sounds that it's talking about. And
finally, a good recommendation there, because, like, what are you gonna get if you look it up in a text form? At most, you will get the IPA notation, the International Phonetic Alphabet notation, which will be correct. But that doesn't actually help you form them if you're not familiar with them. You will do much better if you're just listening to them all along.
Watch some videos where they actually give diagrams inside the mouth where the tongue's moving around and how it's different. Like, for example, I saw a video a while ago where they were talking about the T in this language and how it's different to English, but it looks...
I mean, this can be potentially useful.
Very, very same, but it's just slightly different. Basically, the tongue's just in a slightly different spot. And
the Congress member's name was Boy Howdy or Trey Gowdy. And the motherfucker looks like 1980s CGI.
Actually show you a diagram, and I was like, oh, and I moved my tongue there, made the exact same sound. It's like, boom, got it, okay. But if I just tried speaking without looking that up, I would have just done the English T, and then every word that had that T in it would have been just cemented permanently that way, okay? Until I went back 2 years later.
I mean, it wouldn't be cemented permanently, because that's not how any of this works. But, I mean, what you would want to do, see, the more you actually hear these sounds, the more you expose themselves to them and pay attention and really let the shit wash over you and try to extract every bit of meaning and understanding that you can get out of it, you will be developing an internal account of how these sounds work. And your tongue may not find them immediately, or the other bits of your mouth, but they will give you a starting point. But okay, I need a little bit of a bio break, so I will be back in just a few minutes.
Hey, implicit connotations. I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Galantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Galantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik Women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jacobin, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Cabiese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much.
Right, and I'm back. Oh wow, that is a wonderful freeze frame. Like he's about to pull his ear off. Okay, so let's finish up the definitive method of how to completely deny yourself any benefit from comprehensible input.
after someone kept pointing it out to me, and then I spent an obscene amount of time correcting it. You can correct things, don't worry about that, but just for pronunciation's sake, this is the one time you want to try and get things down is before you start speaking. And the best way...
No, don't do this. Absolutely don't do that. Your pronunciation will improve. Like, do you still pronounce shit the way you did when you were 2 years old? Like, I don't think most people do, actually. Because as you keep speaking, as you keep hearing, your pronunciation develops. Your ability to make the sounds develops. Like, that is the same, that is, I mean, I'm not going to say it's an identical process to when you're acquiring a new language, but it is very similar. It is identical in that your pronunciation will develop. Don't you know, erect roadblocks to stop yourself. Like, you know, if you say, okay, I have to get these vowels pronounced exactly right before I'm going to speak at all, you're going to take forever. It's just going to stop you speaking. And that is actually going to get in your way. I mean, no, like, do the opposite of this.
Is go watch some videos, understand it, then go grab tutors. You're not going to need long. A couple of hours of tutoring, okay, where people just correct you if you're doing it wrong, even after watching the videos. This is kind of critical, okay? This will make a massive difference down the road. So you don't have to worry about many things in language learning, but this is the one spot where you want to spend a little bit of time. Just those tutors. Taking it.
Okay, this is putting a hell of a lot of pressure on those tutors as well. Because chances are, you know, you spend a couple of hours... Yeah, I mean, that I'm not going to say it won't help, but it's not going to get you all the way there because that's going to take time. All these things take time. What's the fucking rush? What exactly are you going to be? What do you need to be perfect in the language for that you have to speed it up to this extent? Why can't you just accept that this is actually a long-term commitment if you want to get really good at it? Because it is a long-term commitment if you want to get really good at it. It just is.
And you try to say them, and as long as you can pronounce them all fine, you're good to go. You can keep moving forward, okay? Now, learning scripts, it really depends on you guys when you want to do this. Like, you may want to do this as, like, a side thing from the beginning, or you may want to delay it until ages away. Because, like, reading it's very dependent on person to person. Some people, you want to read right away. Some people don't ever care about it at all, okay? Okay, so,
the people who don't care about it at all really ought to reconsider that, because reading's important, actually. You actually learn a lot. You benefit. Like, reading is beneficial in and of itself because you read things, and you learn things, and you experience things. There's all sorts of really good stuff. Like, yeah, don't like fucking dismiss reading.
Learn the sounds. Should you start speaking? No. Okay,
just because there is like a multi-trillion-dollar effort to like make us all fucking illiterate doesn't mean you have to oblige them.
There's this concept called shadowing, chorusing, that they're all slightly different, okay? Mimicking, doesn't matter. Go look it up. Basically, it's where you listen to someone actually speaking the language, and you try to repeat after them. You know the sounds now, okay? And assuming it's using a Latin-based script, it should be pretty easy to superimpose those sounds upon, you know, what you're seeing. Now, if it's like Chinese or something, this is hard, but you can work off the things like...
I mean, I will say shadowing, definitely not a bad idea. Something I definitely do a fair bit.
Yeah. But you want to try and do a little bit of this. And by a little bit...
But actually, I mean, if you are trying, you know, that is a way that you improve the way your ability to produce and recognize the sounds, actually. That is a much more sensible way to do it than any of what he was saying, because you keep hearing the sound, and you can mimic it.
But I mean, probably a fair bit, okay? You want to do like hours worth of this. And this is probably the most boring part for a lot of people, but what we're trying to do now is to get you into a natural flow of the language before you start generating your own sentences. So you want to practice...
Yeah. Like, why are we putting all these preliminaries in there? Just generate your own sentences. The flow will come. Just, the flow will come if you start, like, making things come out. This is not... You don't need to set up all these fucking preliminaries. It does not help. It just delays and is going to make you more nervous about your speaking. And making you nervous about speaking is not going to help you because you're going to be more hesitant to speak.
Practice these over and over and over, okay? And like certain sentences here, there, just do this a fair bit. Now, you're at a stage in language where you're either like an advanced beginner, or maybe you're intermediate, or maybe you're even right at the beginning, but you've got a basic understanding of the language. You haven't had to study any grammar. You've probably got...
Yes, you have, actually. You have studied grammar. You have done it in a very effective way, the way that we all acquire grammar. When you're actually... The input that you're exposing yourself to, it's grammar. It's all grammar. There's grammar everywhere in it. You are studying grammar through observation. As Lamont from Days and Words very aptly put it, this is studying grammar. Like, if if you watch this video from the point of view of someone trying to learn modern Australian English, you are studying the grammar of modern Australian English just by watching him apply it. Like, that is studying grammar. Studying grammar is not just like looking at, conjugation and declension tables and all that shit. Studying grammar is watching grammar in action and observing it and, gradually internalizing it. That's studying too.
Anywhere from a couple of hundred words down to 1,000 words you already understand, and then lots more that you can passively kind of understand. Now, that deck that you created earlier, you could then go back and just practice all those words in it. You could just create a separate deck, and rather than just listening to it, now you try and practice speaking with them. But when it comes to output practice, this is where you want to start speaking, okay? So you're going to work with another type of card system, which is called a closed card system. And I know I'm throwing out lots of information right now. This is like...
Yes, and the great thing is that you can kind of ignore most of it, because there are just some bad ideas in here, and then there's some good ideas that his explication on them actually makes them bad. Because he doesn't understand. And at this point, I really kind of don't understand the hang-up. He actually kind of assumes, it's like he assumes that he already knows everything there is to know on this subject, and that there could not possibly be a completely different paradigm that he simply does, is not opening himself to and recognizing. Because he's trying to force everything into a particular paradigm, which is that of memorization.
Super freaking dense, okay? And if people want specific videos on specific parts, I may have that video already on my channel, or I may...
If you read, my host family a long time ago sent me the Japanese translation of the full Don Quixote by Cervantes, and Quixote is always saying "sesha." This is the one of many ways to say "I" that you probably should not just go around say, like, you will get very interesting looks if you walk around Shinjuku introducing yourself. "Sesha wa Brian de gozaru." People will be like, they expect that you're going to pull a sword on them.
But we shall see, okay? But my point being is, you're going to start using these closed cards. And closed cards are basically where you have a complete sentence in the language on the front of the card, and one part of it is hidden. And the job is, you read it, and you need to fill in the hidden part. So the idea here is that by reading it, your brain will predict what that missing part is. And if you do this for a lot of basic sentences, and how can you get these basic sentences? You can go to AI and ask it. And by this point...
God, don't do that! There are so many better ways to do it. Why, do you not know about search engines? Do you not know about books? These are things that exist from the before times. Except it's not the before times, we still got them. They're the right now times. Why are you talking about this as if these are the only resources we're left with? There are so many better resources than this. Many of them free.
Assuming you're an advanced beginner, maybe an intermediate level, you are able to tell when AI is already making some stupid mistakes. If you're...
unless you've been relying on that crap from in the first place, in which case you will think that it isn't. What you can just assume that if AI is putting out output, it's probably wrong in some way. Which is why you could rely on useful sources from people who know about this stuff and are good at explaining it to you.
Worried, you could just keep a tutoring session going with one of the natives and ask them to just check the sentences.
Oh, God, that sounds like a huge pain in the ass. Just from the point of view of the tutor. So all the tutor is being the proofreader for fucking Grok? That's what you're going to pay the tutor for. You're going to sit here, okay, here, this is the latest thing that Mecha Hitler put out. Tell me what's wrong with it. And then and then it's like, yeah, they won't know where to start because there's so many fucking things. And the session is over. That sounds just painful on so many different levels. Why do this? Why, like, this is a horrible idea.
You're adding in before you add them in practice. But there comes a point where you're able to ask AI and be like, that looks wrong. There's something wrong with it.
Yeah, well, maybe that should be the point where you decide to look someplace else. You could, you could do these things without actually asking AI at all.
Going on here, okay. But anyway, you're going to get these sentences and you're going to start adding these in. And you're going to focus less on listening to those audio cards, and you may even get to a point where you just straight up delete that and remove it, because now you have the pronunciation. You have the ability to...
Yeah, well, you may have a start on the pronunciation. Maybe if you're really, really good at picking up sounds, then you just outright have the pronunciation. But, I mean, there isn't a point where the development ends. That is one of the many things that is really, really frustrating about and this isn't just Evil Dia. He does it, but he's an example of an overall thing where people think that there's a point where this ends, where the process of learning and acquiring and developing in the language just sort of ends and you're done. And there isn't. Because the whole time that you're interacting and using the language, you're developing in the language. You're learning new words. You're learning new ways of saying words that you already knew. You're learning new concepts and stuff like that. Like,
speak the language, okay? You just need to practice lots and lots of sentences with continuous so that your brain gets good at making that fill-in. It gets good at filling in those gaps. What kind of sentences you want to add? Again, this depends on what you want to achieve. There's concepts called language islands, templates, all of these things have been popularized all over YouTube.
Yes, and you can just kind of skip over all of them, because none of them are particularly useful. All of them will result in massive frustration.
Basically, you pick sentences around topics that you care about. For me, it's gaming, so
I agree with the idea of focusing on topics that you care about. When you have enough of an understanding of the language that you can start looking at content and understanding content on stuff that you're into, immediately start doing that. Immediately start seeking it out. You will benefit no end from it because it will be more interesting than the stuff that is done generally for language learners. And you will learn all sorts of words that relate to the thing that you want to do, that you want to be able to talk about. Yeah, just immediately, I'm not going to say don't go back, because there is still benefit that you can have from the stuff that is specifically for learners until you get to the point where you understand every single word of it already, and then, I mean, and then you're probably not getting anything new from it. But the minute you are actually able to understand, a cookery video, if that's what you're into your target language, or a video on object-oriented programming or knitting or whatever you want to do in your target language, start seeking that stuff out. Start looking at it. Start finding creators on those topics in your target language that you enjoy, and make that part of what you do. Yeah, I mean, priming is actually one area where flashcards definitely can be useful, and there it isn't, putting in just a random list of pronouns or something. It's words that you are likely to hear in the next, 10 minutes or how long this video is or something like that. And that is definitely worthwhile, especially if you're very early on and unlikely to get everything from context. I mean, that can definitely be helpful. It can help, make these things more digestible. But so much of this,
like a gaming context, quite a bit. So I'm going to build out sentences that are based around that. For example, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be playing. These types of sentences that are kind of run on.
These are the types of sentences you don't need fucking flashcards for, because if you're watching gaming creators, streamers in your target language, whatever it is, they're going to be saying this stuff all the time. And you can just hear them saying it, and you'll know what it is because, the intonation is very similar. The whole, like, presentation of it is very similar from language to language a lot of the time. And so you just take it in that way. I mean, it's like, I did not set out specifically to learn dates and how to talk about dates in Thai. But because that is the beginning of every comprehensible Thai video, I am very used to talking about dates. Like, that is probably the subject I can talk about most fluently, just because I know the questions you ask, and I know the answers. Sort of shaky on some of the days of the week, and on the months, because a lot of their content was made in specific months. So there's lots of stuff where it's just where it's November, a fair bit in December, but there are lots of months that I have not actually even seen the name of yet. And since I'm doing this as an experiment, I'm not seeking that information out elsewhere. I know I could find it without even relying on Gemini, but I'm not going to. I'm going to, because I want to see what the experience of doing exactly what they're doing is, so I can talk about that.
Sentences, get it from a native. You can mine them from videos. Mining is another concept where you basically go to a video, you find a sentence you love, and you're like, this is exactly what I want. Take the whole sentence, put it in your Enki, close out certain parts of it, practice it over and over. Now, obviously, depending on what you want to achieve, you're going to want to, at this point also, not just be watching content, try and make goddamn friends in the language. The more you make friends...
In fact, that's not a bad idea to do from the very start.
In the language, the more the language just becomes part of your life, okay? You can do this in many different ways. Like, I've made friends in, for example, in Spanish, and the way I do that is just other YouTubers. I just hang out and play games with them.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely good advice. I don't know about waiting this long. Yeah, you can do this earlier on. If they, it may be frustrating if they if you don't have a common language. So, but if you meet people who are actually patient enough to be able to interact with you, even though you're going to have difficulty understanding them and they may have difficulty understanding you, those are probably not bad people to be hanging out with.
Plenty of places you can go to make friends. And from there, it's really up to you.
And once again, it's the concept of patience. The concept of patience is if you're serious about languages, the concept of patience is everywhere, because you need people to be patient with you. You need to be patient with you. You need to be patient with the process. You need to understand that these things just take time.
This is not all-encompassing. I haven't given you all the information. This is more specific to a certain type of person, and you may not be that person. This is why I cannot make the ultimate language learning video. Because
also because he doesn't know enough about these things. He doesn't even understand enough about the concepts that he talks about in order to, explain why he disagrees with them. He really is not the person to be asking these things for. It would be really nice if he decided at some point to really recognize that there is this paradigmatic error going on that is leading him simply to sort of collide with core ideas about language acquisition and never really comprehend them, and and break through that. Because it would be really good. It would be a good learning experience for him. It would make his content so much better. But right now, he's not the one to be looking for this for. I mean, the ultimate method is going to be very individualized, because the comprehensible input is as broad a category as humanity is, or as the universe is, really. But this really isn't it.
There is no specific way. Certain things I spoke about in there may not apply to you. You may not even enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, then it doesn't matter how fucking optimized it is. It's a terrible idea for you to do. This is why...
Well, maybe sometimes you might have to do... this is another... It isn't either enjoyable or pointless. Sometimes maybe there are things about a language, some things about the process, that do in fact bore you. And now maybe there are ways to make them more enjoyable. like for example, by changing the topic in which they come up, by finding different people to present them. I mean, depending on what language you're trying to learn, there may be all sorts of options there. But sometimes some of the things, they may just be a little bit boring, but they're still important. Like, if the goal matters to you, then putting up with the fact that some aspects of achieving that goal are not the most exciting in the world should be, that should be a reasonable sacrifice.
I have so many videos on my channel where I just give input, because realistically, you need to find what works for you. However, talking about that specific method I spoke about just there, I am thinking about maybe, in the future, using that to make a series where I actually learn another language using that method for that specific individual.
Okay, that would be interesting, because I have a feeling it wouldn't go well.
Because I think that does cover a large amount of people, but not all people. And then you can like walk through that whole thing with me. If you're interested in that, sub to the channel, because I am looking into another language challenge, which will start sometime soon, which could mean anytime in the next 6 months. And I may end up using that method if that's what people want. At that time, you'll know when it comes to it, because I'll let my community vote on what happens next. Okay, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Okay, so that was frustrating. Let's see what we've got. Let's see. What sort of things have we got to look at? Okay, we already looked at that. See what in Pablo's time. ¿Cómo hablar cualquier idioma? Método de políglota. 日本人が気づいていない日本... Oh, already watched that. Okay, I'm kind of curious about... This is a video from someone called Jackie Bolin, not somebody I've heard of. But it showed up in my recommendations called What is Competency-Based Language Teaching? I've never heard of competency-based language teaching, but I'm interested in learning about it. So let's find out.
What is competent?
Oh, okay. This is a 2-minute video. So it's very short. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to drop the link in chat for anyone who wants to watch the whole thing, because we're probably not going to get to watch the whole thing here. Wrong window, skipped it. Here, okay, here's the link. Competency-based language teaching.
Competency-based language teaching. It was developed in the 1970s as kind of a survival method for newcomers or refugees to an English-speaking country where they just had to survive and kind of know the basics, just enough to communicate in whatever situation or context that they found themselves in.
Okay. So it's sort of a very bare bones method.
This method focuses on what learners do in real life. They're not just learning kind of random grammar and vocabulary that might be applicable at some point in the future, maybe, or maybe not.
Okay, so the topics are orientated towards the specific needs of the learner.
They're learning things that they need for today or tomorrow, to go to the store, to order some food on the phone, to talk to maybe the postman or postwoman, something like that. For this method, assessment is not made in comparison to other students, as would be like in a traditional language learning class. It's made...
Yeah, and... okay. So how is assessment done?
Against benchmarks. So for example, can a student order food on the phone? Yes or no?
Okay.
Or can a student maybe fill out a job application form? Yes or no? So students are kind of measured against themselves and what tasks they can complete that are relevant for their daily life. So this method has 4
I have to say, these video transitions are making me a little bit dizzy.
Competency areas. The first one is interacting with others. The second one is understanding instructions. The third one is getting things done. And the fourth one is sharing information that you need. So
getting things done is kind of a broad category. What things?
That's it for the competency-based language learning method. Please be sure to check out my book, ESL, EFL, Teaching, Practice, and Methodology. If you like this video, please hit like.
Is that the entire thing?
Subscribe, and leave a comment. Also, if you want to support this channel, please be sure to check out membership options.
Okay. No, I wasn't trying to do that. I did not notice that was such a short video. Okay. here we have the Mada Jared, who has a video called "Why I Don't Buy the Flashcards Over Immersion Take." Yeah, that was I did not realize that was such a short video. I thought
so
that this
video
was...
the other day called the...
Wow. That sounds like a lot of work needs to be done in this room. Here is here's the link to the video, dropping that into chat. And I'm curious...
Best flashcard to immersion ratio for fluency from a channel called Jeremiah's Language Ideas. I've already watched it through, and I found a few points that I just kind of wanted to talk about, and so I thought we'd just take a little dive together.
What is the optimal input?
This is a very busy room background.
I think this is such an important question for anybody at any stage learning a language, and yet I don't think I've directly talked about it that much on this channel. So here we go. I think this is super important for you. So,
Okay, I've seen a couple of videos by this guy. Not by Mada Jared.
I think I have a little bit of a hot take here. It, of course, depends on your goals, just like everything with language learning, right? It depends heavily on your goals. But I'd say
he has a cat.
if for most people, you're probably better off with the majority of your time with the language being spent with flashcards. I know, it sounds crazy, right? But
it doesn't sound like a very good idea. The majority of your time?
Okay, yeah, so it does sound crazy, and also I'm interested to hear where he's going. I don't think it depends on your goals. I think it depends on your level. I will just say, like, at the beginner stage...
I would say... I'm not even gonna... Yes, there is... I'm almost more interested in the cat, to be honest. That's just how I feel about cats. I wouldn't say it depends on your level. I wouldn't say it depends on anything. I just don't... Flashcards have some very, very specific uses. And other than that, you should not be spending most of your time looking at fucking flashcards. That is not going to be helpful because that is just rote memorization of decontextualized phrases.
You're doing these core decks, you're repping out stuff, getting a base vocabulary so you can prime yourself for immersion.
Priming. Okay, that's... like when I say specific uses, there we go. Priming. That is exactly what I'm talking about.
In the intermediate level, you're still mining.
God, this guy he's reacting to looks so much like this guy I went to high school with. It's definitely not him, but it could be it could be his twin.
Ton of cards, so you're probably still going to be spending a bit more time in SRS trying to get your backlog down rather than immersing. And then at the advanced stage, you're not going to be finding as many unknown words in the wild, so you'll probably be spending more time immersed.
Well, it is Anki and it's discontents, it seems, because Jared also agrees with me that this spend most of your time with flashcards approach is not a great idea.
Trying to find more unknown words to then put into your flashcard SRS system, right? So I think it depends on your level, not your goals necessarily, but let's see where he's going with this.
But hear me out, okay? So if you're making flashcards in the right way, which is you're making them I+1.
And that cat is very happy. Cats love places where people are moving because there are all sorts of things to climb up on.
Which means that in every flashcard, there's only one element in that card that you don't understand. That turns that flashcard into comprehensible input, right? If there's like...
Okay. I would say it's like comprehensible, it's diluted comprehensible input. But okay, this makes more sense than I thought it was going to be. I was actually kind of surprised based on other stuff I've heard. This creator whose name I don't remember, I watched him like once on stream like a few weeks ago. I was a bit surprised to be hearing him advocate something like this, but this makes a little bit more sense than where I thought he was going. Yeah, some people I think are obsessed with the idea that it has to feel like grind. That that if it doesn't feel like grind, if it doesn't feel, if there isn't some pain in it, that they aren't actually learning, that there isn't any benefit, that anything that feels comfortable and enjoyable can be made more efficient by adding something to it that makes it less pleasant. I genuinely believe that is a big part of what's going on here. People do not want to believe that a version that is actually comfortable and relaxing and entertaining could be the fastest way of going about it.
5 words on the card that you don't understand, then you're just wasting your own time. It's just too difficult, and at that point, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You're not getting that much out of it. You're not getting as much of it as you think you are. It's all...
Okay, so I do agree that like there is a limit to how much like unknown content you should have on a flashcard for sure. I do think when you
in fact, I would say for priming purposes, they should be as simple. Steve Kaufman said this, and I agree entirely with him. Because I think this is the way. I think whether you use flashcards for priming or you use something else as a vehicle for priming, just you make them as simple and as easy as possible, so that there isn't a whole lot of mental effort going into them, because the idea is just to give you a heads up that this is a thing that you're going to encounter.
I think this argument that your card becomes comprehensible input just because it's I+1, like, yes, technically that's true to an extent.
Yeah, like, very diluted. Neat keyboard.
Matches your level of the language. However, to just rep out the same comprehensible cards over and over again with the same context for those words,
it ceases to be I+1 very, very quickly.
Then getting repeated exposure to those same words in immersion, where you're going to be seeing them in a ton of different contexts.
Mm-hmm.
You're also, that's just not worth the squeeze, as you were saying. Like, I just feel like,
yeah, I tend to agree with
like,
this.
Let's take, I don't know, let's take a word, for example, like daku or idaku, right? To harbor feelings, to hold feelings or something, right? If I were to rep these same, like, 2 cards out for those, like, I would get a general idea of how to use them, but I might also overgeneralize and use, misuse idaku versus daku, right? Because one refers to harboring feelings and one means to actually physically embrace or hold something.
Yes, and actually, yeah, that is a common source of confusion, because especially because you often, the latter one, you hear a lot in songs, and people are singing very fast, and so you think, sometimes things just get omitted when people are speaking quickly, so you hear dakishimete, and you think it is idakishimete, but it is not. Idakishimeru wa, idakishimete じゃないんだよ。そうでは全く毛頭ない。
But if I only have like a flashcard for one of those use cases, and I'm like, oh, I have a card for that word already, I'm good, and then I don't really immerse as much, like,
definitely.
I'm gonna sound weird to Japanese people, and that's just like one small example.
Yes, it will sound very strange, but I think that's one where people will very quickly understand why you're getting it wrong. Sometimes people will say some, learners will say some weird shit, and it takes unpicking, and you have to understand something about their native language and all sorts of other things and the context in which they learned it. Dakishimeru versus daku versus idaku. That is an easy one. It's clearly just a mishearing.
I think that to build a good language model, you want to have exposure to the language in a natural format as much as possible.
100%.
Let's continue though.
Almost like paradoxical, because if you're inexperienced with language learning, you might think that the more unknown things you have on your flashcards, the more you're going to learn. But it's
I agree with him here. There is a limit to the amount of total unknowns you can have. Somehow every freeze frame, whether I'm doing it or Jared doing it, catches him in a facial expression that makes him look a little bit like Wario.
Not the case. It doesn't turn out like that. Trust me, I've tried. I've been there. The best thing to do is have only one unknown element, maybe 2 is really pushing it.
In fact, this is why we were talking about question and answer a second ago, in the context of, once again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to freeze frame you like this. Like, if you end up watching this, you probably won't. I really did not mean to do that. It was just the timing. It was literally just the timing. But the reason that they do question and answer in, say, comprehensible Tai, for example, and other and other beginner materials for comprehensible input is because it is a way of having variables, but in a context where there's a lot of stability. Because the less you know in the language, the more stability you need in order to be able to deal with variables.
For certain sentences,
Okay, I mean, yeah, genuinely good take on like comprehensible input. I think that that's a good point. You definitely want to have like a good balance of knowns. So I mean, nothing to really disagree with there.
talked about that on the channel before, but one unknown element on each card is the best. So that makes the card comprehensible, right?
That's fair.
And you also want to make sure it's a whole sentence on the card, not words, because...
Yeah, I mean, I agree with this. This is one of the things that I most disagree with about, like, the evil dia definitive method that we were just looking at, is the idea of, like, putting these things into the smallest units. Because the way that it just fundamentally misunderstands what you're doing. You are not just learning individual words, you are learning relationships. You need to have these things in relationships with each other in order to really benefit.
Learning words out of context is really, really difficult to translate into real fluency, right? It just makes it so much harder because very rarely in the real world, unless it's like a word like yes, no, maybe.
I didn't
like
coordinate that. I didn't deliberately time that to be drinking at the same time as him. I'm just thirsty.
Like almost every time you hear a word, it's going to be in the context of a sentence.
Yeah.
So I do agree for the most part when it comes to context here.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about it is this is why when somebody will be like, say a word in whatever language, it is so hard because you're being asked to do it in a vacuum.
I mean, yes, with comprehensible input in general, like, the more words you know on your flashcard, the easier it's going to be for your brain to establish those connections and understand how everything fits together. The same also just goes for immersion in general, though. If you make a flashcard for a word and you're like, cool, this is all the context I need, and then rep that card 15 times, you're not going to get nearly as much of a benefit as if you see that word 15 times in your immersion through random shows, through manga, through reading, through anime.
Yeah, because it isn't just the word and its association with with meaning. It's the word and its association with other words and other concepts and things. That is one of the most fundamental things to understand about this process. It is all deeply, deeply relational. It takes a node graph to give you a word.
Because if you do that, then you get to see the word used in sentences with all sorts of different grammar patterns and words, and you get all these additional benefits of these proxy words that are...
Yeah, like, for example, there may be examples of words that mean a thing, but somehow every time you see that word to mean that particular thing, it's being said by somebody who is pissed off at somebody else. And you start to generalize and say, well, maybe... Like, for example, let's say somebody is mining some sort of, like, I don't know, fucking English language soap opera. And so they have the phrase, and there's a breakup going on. And she says, I need you to get your crap out of my house. And now you, basic level English learners, are understanding your crap means your things, your stuff. And so you put that down on your Anki deck. And then, and you drill it. Yeah, your crap means your things. So, and so you learn that. And you lose the context because you're putting it on this Anki deck. And so you just say it, and you don't understand that actually, in operative usage, you only say your crap to refer to the belongings of a person you are currently annoyed with. So if you walk around saying that because you just think it's a colloquial way of saying your things, your stuff, you will make a whole bunch of native speakers think you're mad at them. The context is really key. and you don't necessarily understand the context the first couple of times.
Showing up. If you have a sentence full of words you already know, using new sentence structures, patterns, and grammar, you're getting all these additional benefits on the side rather than just repping the same card 15 times.
Yeah, because it's the node graph.
That's just my take. Yes, your brain might have to work a little bit harder in immersion and it may take longer, but you're building a mental model, but pretty much the same way Japanese people did.
Yeah, I mean, and also it gets less hard. Because the more words you actually have, the more knowns there are in your node graph, the fewer things you actually need to focus on. The more the most effort comes at the very beginning, where you really do not know what is essential and what is not. You don't really know what you're picking up, what is signal and what is noise, what is just totally extraneous. The more you do it, the more you can make the signal noise distinction on your own and develop your understanding on your own, and then you actually you have far fewer unknowns. It becomes the amount of effort involved in deriving more knowledge, more words, more structures from the input actually decreases over time.
By doing massive amounts of immersion in the actual content in the native language, you are experiencing raw Japanese, and the same words, you're seeing them over and over again in different contexts and getting a better idea of how well they're used. It's a very deep understanding of each word versus this very surface level understanding of how a word is used just from repping out an Anki card over and over again. But I digress.
And so by learning words in the context of a sentence, you're able to more easily grasp their meaning. And on top of that, you're able to learn how to use it more naturally, right? And it has much more direct carryover to your language fluency.
That's what I'm saying, bro. That's literally what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I think
the more context is actually better.
We are both in agreement the importance of context and understanding how to acquire words. But I do think that the way you go about that, that's where things start to split off a little bit.
Future, and even to your listening comprehension, right? Because that's how you're going to be comprehending words in the future. And so,
yeah,
it's really important to have those two elements in place. I+1 and entire sentences. Once you have that structure in place,
in fact, entire contexts, entire relational context, entire visual context, the more of that stuff you have, the better you are, the more you're going to be able to derive from it. Because, for example, again, let's get back to the example I gave of using the phrase "your crap" to refer to your things, your stuff. If you have a whole lot of other context of people talking about other people's stuff, and you realize that people don't, that actually, for the most part, people do not call it your crap. They say other things. And then you start to build an account of the different words that people use to refer to people's stuff. And you build this relational understanding of when you would select one word over another. Like, let's say you're moving in together, and you say, "Oh, I've made some space, honey. I've made some space for your shit." You wouldn't say that, probably. I don't know. Maybe you would in some context. But that probably would not be the first, the first choice in that situation. It is, these are things that are in the node graph, and when you take it and put it into flashcards, you're truncating the node graph. You're losing important nodes, and you're reducing it. So for priming, not a bad thing. But I would say, yeah, that you definitely don't want to spend most of your time on that, because you're never going to be able to make flashcards that include all of the relevant nodes, all of the relevant characteristics and relational aspects, because there is just so much of it, and when you first encounter it, you're unlikely to know most of those things. You are very unlikely to really work out all of those things the first time you see a word being used.
Now your flashcards become comprehensible input, right? And so that's where things get a little bit confusing now. Because now that your flashcards are comprehensible input, you require much less time just spent watching content, right? And that's really...
So going back to what I said earlier, technically, if your goal is to learn words like a definition, like you put a singular meaning to a word, then sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you are trying to learn a specific word list, when you're studying something else, yeah, I mean, there can be some sense to this, but not for language acquisition.
Okay, if you have comprehensible input cards, then you're technically, sure, you're immersing in comprehensible input, as you're saying. I think that's the take here. But my qualm here, once again, is that, let's say that, I don't know, your goal is to learn, like, the 10,000 most common Japanese words.
Speaking of languages where there's so much relational context in all sorts of just everyday words, like Japanese is absolutely the just a prime example of this, because there are a million, like, the difference between hanasu, shaberu, mosu, moshiageru, those all mean to talk or to speak. Kangaeru, omou, gukou suru, toka. All of that means to think. There are different situations in which you would use each of those things. It's all relational. It is, so if you are taking something, abstracting it from the context in which you encountered it, and just writing down a literal English meaning of it, you're getting something out of that. But you are missing a whole lot of other stuff. So, this takes a lot of caution, because you are actually losing a huge amount of information, and the earlier on you are in your process, the less you will even realize what you're losing.
Either go about that by doing the core 10K, right? Because let's just think about this, practically. You're doing the core 10K, and as you do it, you learn more words, and then all those sentences, as you get more and more deeper into the 10K, all those sentences become comprehensible input, right? So why do you even need to immerse in the first place? Why would you ever need to immerse? Maybe people, I think for me, like, I want to immerse in Japanese. I want to get good enough so I can watch anime, talk to people, read books, listen to podcasts.
Yeah, I mean,
the only way...
Really, one would assume that the goal of of learning the language is to be able to surround yourself meaningfully with the language. The reason that you are learning Japanese in the first place is so that you can talk to people in Japanese and listen and hear people talking in Japanese and understand them, and watch movies in Japanese and listen to music in Japanese and do all that, and you understand all of it, and you can have those interactions and you can talk about that stuff. So, I mean, methods that are actually taking you away from the place that you're trying to go are actually kind of counterintuitive in that respect as well.
The way to get better at anything in life is by doing that thing. I used to be a swimmer. What I did to get faster at swimming? I went to swim practice. I wanted to be a professional Fortnite gamer at some point. That was a failed career. I mean, look at me here, but I played Fortnite for like hours and hours.
Where'd the cat go?
And here we are. Same with Japanese.
Oh, there's the cat.
I find a weak point. For me, it's reading, and I spend hours reading novels, and now I'm better at reading. I can read more advanced things. Now, yeah, there's words I don't know. I probably would be able to pick up on them if I was more of an Anki drone, but it's more enjoyable to actually immerse in the content.
Yes.
And I think that
Yeah, I mean, this is an important point. I think so much of the suboptimal language learning advice comes from this idea that if it doesn't suck at least a little bit, that it isn't real progress. Because it just couldn't possibly be as easy as watching videos that you enjoy and understanding what they say until you start being able to say things like they say too. You know, it couldn't possibly be as simple as that.
At the end of the day, if your end goal is to be really cracked at Anki and like have a huge mature like card count to like flex off people, sure. But if your goal is to like be able to use the language,
A mature card count. Wow, is this a thing? Is this a flex people have?
you know, speak well, listen, read, write, whatever your goals are, that and you need to do those things more. Now, I do think that Jeremiah has some genuinely good takes here, especially when it comes
Jeremiah, that's his name, damn it. Yes.
to like comprehension and also context. But beyond that, to kind of say that to acquire a language or to get fluent in a language that you need to spend most of your time grinding out flashcards, I just think is misleading.
It does not make any sense to me. It's like, it's less enjoyable and less beneficial at the same time. You're spending more time on admin than you're actually the admin of like writing up the fucking flashcards than you are in the interesting and edifying and educational thing of actually being around the language.
I personally don't agree with it. No shade towards Jeremiah, but I just can't see myself kind of envisioning that. Right, Junebug? I just personally can't see myself agreeing with that. If we define fluency, just for the sake of this video, as B2 according to CEFR, right, which is, I'd put it on the screen right now, editor. So we have a few things.
Can understand complex text, talk with native speakers, write and explain viewpoints. Okay, yeah. Yeah, like, of all of the card collections to have, that is just so, like, if you're going to collect cards, there are so many cooler cards out there.
Things we gotta get good at here. Now, I'm honestly dog shit at writing. It's probably gonna stay that way. So let's just talk listening and reading, because those are the two main skills I've been focusing on. And I feel like I've improved so much in the past 2 years. And you know what I've been doing is immersing. If you
another terrible freeze frame of Jeremiah. At least it wasn't my fault this time.
At reading, you gotta read more. If you want to get better at listening, you gotta listen more. If I want to be a better cat owner, I've got to take care of my cats to spend more hours with them to know how they're feeling. And if I want to be better at Japanese, I got to spend more time with the language.
Aww.
Sure, Anki's a way to do that. But, I mean, how do most Japanese people learn Japanese, right? It's exposure to the language repeatedly.
Yeah. I mean, I just... I have never really seen the value of flashcards in this context. The only time I ever used flashcards for anything in my entire life was there was like the very first research project I ever did. I was in grade 4, and we were required to churn out some research cards. That was one of the things. I mean, flashcards. Yeah. Well, I like all cats. I'm very easy when it comes to cats. Cats are just wonderful. But. So, there are certainly, when you're trying to specifically memorize certain things for a certain purpose, I mean, obviously, I can see the utility there, but that's not what language acquisition has ever really mostly been about.
By watching content, listening to content, reading stuff. And you've even said it yourself, is that, things don't always translate one-to-one, right? So I think to rely on just a flashcard-based system to acquire most of your vocabulary and neglect immersion is going to be very detrimental for your Japanese in the long run. It's not going to be...
It's such a surprising take, specifically because of... He very specifically, Jeremiah, recognizes the value of I+1, recognizes the value of input, is trying to, in these flashcards, to approximate input to the greatest extent possible. But why not just do input if you're already trying to do it, approximate input to that extent? Because you're already recognizing that is kind of the gold standard.
Really solid language
strikes me as contradictory.
You're just going to probably have a bit of a jankier, idea of how Japanese works.
What I really wanted to talk about, like the time of consuming content to using flashcards. What's that type of ratio going to look like? Now, with that being said, I'm only talking about hours here that you have dedicated specifically to language study. So like if you're like obviously driving to work, obviously you're going to listen to a podcast. And if you're going to be driving to work, let's just say for you personally, your commute is 1.5 hours to and from work. So 3 hours total every day. Listening to flashcard ratio will be off. I'm not talking.
Well, obviously, I'm going to drive while doing my flashcards. Thank you. I'm kidding. No one do that. I mean, that's fair. Yes, fill in the gaps with immersion, but listening, I have no issues with that. I mean, that makes sense. But you're saying you're
what I'm
not
talking about here is the situation.
Okay, I want to hear what he says, but like, so you're telling me that you are actually immersing quite a bit when you can, but you're not accounting that into the ratio. Let's hear.
Where you have 2 hours to sit down and actively study the language. In my opinion, very little of that time should be spent just sitting down and watching content. The majority of that time should be spent grinding flashcards in a way that's optimal for your goals. For example,
that's just backwards. You're spending more time on the admin than you're spending on the actual process of language acquisition there.
Okay, so if you only have so little time in the day to immerse or to study, to actually sit down and consciously study, you should grind out flashcards instead of watching the content in your target language.
Grinding flashcards in a way that's optimal for your goals. For example, if you have 1.5 hours of active study available to you for Japanese, right, and your main goal is to increase your reading comprehension, I would recommend spending at least an hour of that time, of that 1 hour and a half, doing flashcards related to your reading comprehension, whether that be like reading cards, kanji cards, whatever that looks like for you. And then the next half an hour would be just like free flow reading or something like that, right?
My main question is, like, if you give yourself so little time to immerse, you're going to be pressured to choose either like harder content that's going to make immersion not fun because you're like, oh, I'm doing like 20 new cards a day, or like I need to find more new words to do. Because if you're spending so much time in your flashcard app, are you eating cardboard? Oh my.
Yes, they will do that, cats.
If you're already spending so much time in Anki, then I assume you're going to get through and your backlog's going to be pretty much non-existent. So people are going to be pressured to, if they're like limiting how much time they're immersing, they're going to be pressured to choose harder content with more unknown.
Yeah, this is like, if you accept this ratio as making sense, you are actually it's actually pushing you away from all the most beneficial activities and the most enjoyable. Those two things sometimes coincide, and in the world of language acquisition, that is one of the times where they actually do coincide.
And it's going to make the general experience of interaction with the language way less pleasurable. I don't know about, you guys, but I've started Japanese because I found the language beautiful, and I've quit it multiple times because I burnt out, and I found that you need to create a good experience where you're interacting with the language in a way where you're like, yeah, this is chill. I know the language, Not everything's a speedrun. You don't have to completely optimize your like learning journey. There are definitely better ways to study Japanese than I'm doing right now. But the point is that you keep coming back.
Yes.
You need to build a routine that you're like happy with, and like you can just keep coming back to. And I personally think that 2/3 or more of your study time being Anki over immersion, for probably the majority of people, I don't want to speak for everyone, it's probably not that fun. It's probably not. And I'd probably give up on the language.
I mean, you will get, I will say, you will get really good at writing that way, potentially.
That was how things were.
Just in terms of penmanship, you will have very good penmanship if you spend all that time. Either that, or you will start churning out just utterly illegible crap.
But let's hear the rest of what Jeremiah has to say.
With listening, same thing. Let's just say you're learning Korean and you really want to improve your listening. Then you would spend, if you have 2 hours, let's just say, maybe you would spend an hour and a half of that active time doing listening flashcards, right? Where you're increasing your vocabulary, you're doing a bunch of reviews, all this stuff. You're really listening to sentences, and you're even repeating after them too, in order to really lock in to make sure that you heard it properly and all that stuff, right? You're really spending an hour and a half doing listening-based flashcards with no text on the flashcards at all. It's entirely based on your listening ability. You're listening, and then the last half hour is going to be spent just listening to the language. Maybe you just watch a show with no subtitles.
Okay, so my question is like, why not just do that from the get-go with immersion?
Yeah, the exact question I have.
Why not watch so much Japanese content and do like the occasional amount of SRS to the point where your vocabulary grows enough to where like general Korean like dramas and stuff become comprehensible input for you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that should be, as far as I'm concerned, the goal. But okay, so we've had this we've looked into this discussion. I don't think there's much more to say about it. But okay, here's something that actually just showed up in my recommendations right now and sounds kind of interesting to play us out. It's called the Farang Mindset, Changing Your Brain with Thai. And I'm curious about that, because I'm kind of changing my brain with Thai.
ตั้งแต่ผมเรียนไทยมาผมก็กลายเป็นคนละคนกันนะครับเพราะว่าในด้านสุขภาพจิตมันก็ดีขึ้นเหมือนกันคือเมื่อก่อนผมก็มี anxiety มีปัญหาจะไม่ถึงกับแบบซึมเศร้านะแต่ว่าแค่แบบชอบกังวลอย่างเงี้ยเยอะมากแต่ว่าตั้งแต่ผมเจอภาษาไทยมาภาษาไทยก็แบบว่าเปิดโลกผมจริงๆแล้วก็ทำให้ผมแบบ
Okay, as somebody who is very beginning level at Thai, the pronunciation sounds really good.
คนที่แบบว่า สงบกลายเป็นคนที่แบบว่านิสัยดีขึ้นกลายเป็นคนที่แบบว่าเห็นอกเห็นใจของคนอื่นจริงๆผมก็เห็นใจของคนอื่นมากขึ้น
สวัสดีครับโอ้โหภาษาไทยเปลี่ยนโลกได้ภาษาไทยเปลี่ยนชีวิตได้วันนี้ผมขอเปิดดูคลิปจากคุณลีโอจอยส์นะครับลีโอจอยส์เป็นชาวอังกฤษผมฟังจากสำเนียง
See, here's an example, actually, of a thing that you would never actually think to put in a flashcard if you were abstracting Thai comprehensible input into flashcards. This nakap or naka, that is an important thing in Thai. Because it allows you to sort of pause. It is like it's a little bit like aizuchi in Japanese. You could just it doesn't strictly mean a whole lot of anything, but you're ending but it'll allow you sort of end. Oh, I have that Lao for Beginners book. You're ending you're ending a clause, you're ending a phrase, and you're not quite ready to start the next one. So you add that, you know, it's like in it, you know, right? That sort of thing. It just sort of solicits kind of agreement. Naha?
น่าจะเป็นชาวอังกฤษนะครับแต่เขาเรียนภาษาไทยจนเป็นขั้นเทพภาษาไทยนะครับแล้วเขาจะเล่าเรื่องของภาษาไทยไม่ใช่แค่การเรียนภาษาไทยแต่ว่าผลกระทบกับชีวิตจากการเรียนภาษาไทยระดับขั้นเทพนะครับต้องขอบคุณผู้ชมที่แนะนำ
Okay, this thing is apparently entirely in Thai. Okay, the subs are visible. I wanted to just make sure that I was not the only person who could see it.
คลิปของคุณลีโอมานะครับพอฟังไปฟังมาโอ้โหจริงๆเห็นด้วยอย่างแรงสิ่งที่คุณลีโอพูดเรื่องการเรียนภาษาเรื่องของวัฒนธรรมไทยภาษาไทยแล้วพอเขาพูดไปพูดมาวันนี้เดี๋ยวผมอาจจะแทรกอะไรเข้าไปเพราะว่าเกือบทุกสิ่งทุกอย่างที่คุณลีโอพูดผมเห็นด้วยครับ
สวัสดีครับผมลีโอจอยส์สวัสดีครับวันนี้ผมมีเรื่องที่อยากจะคุยกับทุกคนนะครับตอนนี้ผมอยู่ข้างนอกนะครับคิดว่าการเปลี่ยนสภาพแวดล้อมก็น่าจะดีแล้วก็ผมก็ได้รับวิตามินดีด้วยนะครับไปด้วย
สิ่งแรกที่ผมอยากจะคอมเมนต์นะครับสังเกตว่าเขาถ้าเป็นภาษาอังกฤษเขาเรียกว่าเป็น prosody นะครับ prosody ก็คือจังหวะ
Yeah, I mean that is the first thing that jumped out at me too. Again, as somebody who has at this point heard a lot of Thai and knows what it's supposed to sound like, it doesn't understand. You know, my understanding of it is very limited. But I know what somebody speaking at a natural-ish speed in a Thai sentence is supposed to sound like what the thing that I would hear and say, "Oh, they're speaking Thai." He has that.
ในการพูดฟังธรรมชาติมากนะครับหวังว่าถ้าเป็นคนที่กำลังเรียนภาษาไทยอยู่นะครับก็ฟัง prosody ของคุณลีโอนะครับฟังดูธรรมชาติจริง
ๆเรื่องที่ผมอยากจะมาคุยนะครับก็คือเรื่องภาษาไทยนั่นเองคือว่าผมรู้สึกยังไงกับภาษาไทยผมคิดยังไงกับภาษาไทยอะไรต่างๆนะครับผมก็ตั้งคำถามไว้แล้วผมก็จะตอบนะครับ
ภาษาไทยยากไหมจริงๆก่อนที่คุณลีโอจะพูดนะครับผมขอแทรกนิดหนึ่งผมฟังคำถามนี้บ่อยมากนะครับภาษาไทยยากไหมถามว่ายากไหม
ถามว่ายากไหม
มันแล้วแต่
ยากไหม
สำหรับใครเราต้องดูที่มาของคนที่กำลังเรียนอยู่ถ้ามาจาก
See, and I will say this is an example for me. This is an example of like sort of real-time priming, because and a real-time, you know, this is a concept I just came up with a name for. Maybe somebody's already used it, but I'm looking at the English subs here. I'm listening to him. I know, you know, the structures of Thai are ingrained enough in my head at this point that, and I have just barely enough vocabulary that I am like acquiring new words just watching this with the aid of the subs. Like yeah, apparently it means something to do with difficult.
ยุโรปใช่อาจจะยากนิดหนึ่งแต่ผมคิดว่ามันยากเพราะว่า
ผมคิดว่า
คนที่เข้ามาเรียน1ไม่เข้าใจระบบ2 เป็นเพราะว่าคนไทยคิดว่ามันยากเราบอกว่าภาษาไทยยากเขาก็เลยตั้งกำแพงไว้กลายเป็นอุปสรรคในการ
Oh, I agree entirely. The whole idea, when somebody tells you something's really difficult, it does kind of erect a fortress. I mean, well, it depends on kind of the mentality of the person. Like, when people, especially language-related, would say that certain language-related things were just impossible, all of my life, my immediate reaction is like, okay, I'll have a go at that. You know, let's see how fucking impossible it really is. But that will vary from person to person. In case I did not already do it, let me just drop the URL to this video in chat. Because it is time now for me to wrap up and start thinking about what I'm going to do for, like, eating dinner food things. I will be back at 4:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Friday. Thanks to everyone who joined in. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I will